Hey guys, how's it going? It's Andy from Magoo Investing. Happy Tuesday. This is actually the 1-year anniversary of a major move in the stock market last year when the pandemic first hit. This was when we had a bunch of circuit breakers go off, and this was one of my first experiences seeing how much panic can go into the market when there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's really interesting to see what was happening a year ago, and then yesterday we had one of the weirdest days that I've seen on the stock market in a long time. Usually if you have one type of stock that's leading the overall market, maybe it's the tech stocks versus the industrials, you have one that's up like a decent amount, like 2%, and then the other one usually isn't down. It's usually pretty flat on the day. But yesterday we saw the tech stocks being down like 2% overall, and then the Dow Jones is up 2%. And it was really strange to see one be up really big and one be down really big. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And then woke up this morning and kind of expected things to be going down. And no, things are up really big. And so I made a video, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, talking about stocks that I was looking to buy if they dipped further. And I'm a man of my word. One of the stocks that I was watching came down to the zone that I drew in that video, and I bought in yesterday morning. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking it down into 3 parts as I always do. And timestamps will be in the description if you'd like to bounce around to the part that you actually care about. So part 1, I'm going to be talking about the news events and the recent earnings report that has been moving the stock up and down significantly. As I mentioned, this is a stock that was down around 40% from its all-time highs after a mixture of bad news and some catalysts as a result of the stay-at-home stocks pushing the stock down significantly. So I'm going to be talking about what's happening there, and then I'm going to be giving my long-term bull thesis for the stock, because when I buy stock at this point, I'm not looking to really swing trade anything at this point. I'm looking to buy into stocks that I absolutely love, that I think are at a significant discount. So I'm going to lay out the reasons why I'm very bullish on Peloton for a long-term investment. Then part 2, we're going to hop on over to the charts, because this was a stock and a trade that was really initiated based off of technical analysis. So we're going to hop on over to the charts, and I'll give a reminder to people that missed that video, kind of what I was looking at the charts, and see how the price moved. That resulted in me buying into the stock even though the overall market was selling off and the tech stocks have been killed recently. And then part 3, I'm just going to give a summary of how I'm feeling about Peloton overall and just kind of give my thoughts on the overall stock market, because March, for some reason, seems to have a ridiculous level of volatility in the past 2 years. And so while the VIX index is down because the stock market is up today, things have been wild on the overall market, and I think it's very important to have a plan going forward for how you're going to be playing things. Also, before hopping into today's video, we really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button, as it would help my channel out a lot. We're getting close to 10,000 subscribers, so thank you all for the support. So Peloton went IPO back in September of 2019, and on the day that it went public, it fell a pretty decent amount, and that's very different than some of the IPOs that we've been seeing in 2020. Just a couple days before Peloton went public, we had Smile Direct Club, which fell 28% on its IPO date. 2020 was definitely the year of hype and momentum when it came to IPOs, and from the video that I talked about yesterday, the median move on the first day of an IPO being traded was up 20%. So it's very interesting to see that just 2 years ago, stocks were falling after their IPO date. I think about stuff like Uber and Lyft as well. For those of you that don't know, Peloton makes high-quality fitness products that were in a great position to take advantage of the pandemic and the stay-at-home movement. This was a product that was set up very well because they were pretty unknown going into the pandemic during 2020. There was that ad problem where they put up a potentially sexist ad, I think it was like December of 2019, and people were pretty upset about that. And then the pandemic hits, and it's become one of the biggest stories of 2020. As a result of the stay-at-home movement, the stock was up 430% overall in 2020. And whenever I talk about stocks that have incredible years, I always ask the question, is this type of level sustainable? And so in today's video, I'm going to be laying out some of the reasons why I think that not only is this level sustainable, that I think that there's incredible growth potential for Peloton moving forward. One of the ways that I determine if I think a level is sustainable is by looking at the numbers. And when you look at annual revenue, it's pretty impressive. Here's the annual revenue since the company has first released their numbers since 2017. And every year they've doubled their revenue compared to the previous year. So not only was this a company that was in a great spot to take advantage of the stay-at-home movement, they were doing very well revenue-wise for the couple years before that as well. Going along with their revenue, in their last quarter, they had their first $1 billion quarter. It's crazy to think about. Their one quarter outpaced their entire 2019. Just crazy to think about. And so that number in the last quarter was up 128% year over year. So this is a company that has been aggressively increasing their revenue over time, and they have a track record of doing it. While some people may argue that this was a one-off thing, that the pandemic really fueled their revenue growth, I don't necessarily think that way. So here's a couple places that I'm watching as the pandemic eventually eases and people are able to go back to gyms and work out outside, because that's kind of been the discussion that I've been seeing online, is that when the weather starts getting better, people are going to be more likely to just exercise outside. One of the things that I really saw is that right now they're pretty limited on the amount of products that they're selling. Right now they have their bike, and they're coming out with a newer and cheaper treadmill, and they do have a digital app that allows people to do workouts from home. And so that was definitely a nice boost to the company during the pandemic. But As of right now, they have 1.7 million fitness subscribers with the hardware, and that number is expected to reach 2.3 million by the end of this upcoming year. So that is a decent amount of people, but the reason that I think that this is a company that's going to do very well in the future is that the company has come out and said that they have a reasonable goal about hitting 100 million subscribers eventually. And so the reasoning behind that I thought was a very good case for why I like Peloton as a long-term investment. The company came out in their last earnings report and said that there's close to 200 million gym goers in the world, and they're paying hard money month after month to access inferior fitness equipment in inferior locations. And so this makes a lot of sense. So I kind of wanted to look to see, kind of the expectation is that Peloton is a very expensive product, and it's hard to disagree with that. But when I looked it up, the average gym membership in the US is $58. And when you look at paying for the Peloton bike, it is over 39 months, so you do have that long-term investment, but it's $49 a month of a membership. It's not too bad, and then you do have to pay for the subscription. That's $39 a month. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but if you think of it as a gym membership instead of just paying it as a one-time payment, I think for a lot of people, the accessibility and not having to drive, for me, I hate having to defrost my car in the morning, I hate having to look somewhat presentable. If I could work out from the comfort of my own home, I'd absolutely love that. I'm sure there's people that value that just for like $25 a month extra to be able to pay for that. So I'm not saying that this is a cheap product by any means, but I think it's very easy to justify this type of purchase and save you time over the long run about having to actually go to the gym. And, during the pandemic and working out around a lot of people, it might be something to consider. And so I've definitely considered buying a Peloton if I had more cash sitting around. But one of the areas that I see as a potential growth opportunity comes with their acquisition of Precor this past summer. Precor has hundreds of patents for gym equipment, and as I mentioned, Peloton is very limited in the types of products that they've released at this point. As of right now, they just have their treadmills and their bikes. As of right now, Precor has hundreds of patents that they could use to release future products down the line. And so one of the areas that I'm really looking at, and I saw a couple interesting articles about it, is the potential about releasing an elliptical in the future. When I think of Peloton, I think of the younger demographics, people that are more in touch with the tech side. I think having an elliptical compared to the bike or the treadmill could be more attractive to the older demographic, and that would increase the reach of the company significantly. And that would be one of the ways that they could get to that 100 million subscriber level. Obviously, they're still at around 2 million, so they still have a long way to go, but I think that's a fantastic opportunity for the company going forward. And as I've always mentioned when I talk about Peloton, is that they have an incredible retention rate of 96%. So when people buy into the company, they are always very vocal about how much they like it, and the people that are buying in aren't leaving it. So that is a 1-year retention rate. I got that question on a previous video. That is a 1-year retention rate of 96% of people paying for the subscription, not just buying the bike and then not ever using it. So people are buying in, loving the product, and I think there's fantastic growth potential going forward. But I do want to talk about some of the problems that they have been seeing, because as I mentioned, the stock fell 40% from its all-time highs, and there definitely were mainly two catalysts that have pushed it down in the past couple months. The first reason comes from the overall sell-off that we've been seeing from the stay-at-home stocks. These were stocks that did incredibly well in 2020, and it makes sense that people are taking profits and moving their money to more conservative locations. You've been seeing the switch from the tech stocks into safer plays, stuff like the airline, stuff that will bounce back as the economy recovers after the pandemic eventually finishes. And so that's why we've been seeing the Dow Jones that was up yesterday and the NASDAQ was down around 2%. So people are moving out of tech. And for a company like Peloton that was up 430% in 2020, it makes sense that there has been a sell-off compared to its all-time highs. But the area that people have been pointing at as being a bear case for the company, I really don't see it that way. The company has been having problems with their supply chain. What that means is that people are putting in orders to buy the products, but they're not able to get the products made and shipped out on time. And so there have been a lot of cancellations, and people have been saying that as a potential bear case against the company. But when I look at it, I think of it as a really short-term problem. The demand is still there. People still want the products. It just has to do with problems with the supply chain because of the pandemic. And the company has come out and invested $100 million into air freight and ocean freight to try to limit the bottleneck that they've been seeing. And so yes, this investment in freight is going to hurt them in the short term, but I think of this as being an investment for the long term. So as of right now, the company's mentioned that's going to hurt their profit margins. I'm okay with that. They are trying to invest into their future. And while this, yes, does not look that great for the short-term revenue, for someone like myself that's investing for a long-term position, I think this is just kind of a blip in the road, and it allows me to buy in at a significant discount. So while it seems like a bear case on the surface, the more that I look at it, I don't think it's that big of a problem because the demand is still there. People still want the products. Is that they're just not able to get out the products as much as maybe they would have liked. So short term, I think it's already been taken into account going into the next earnings report. So I think it's very likely that maybe if they beat those expectations, the stock will skyrocket because of it. Now that I've laid out my bull case and kind of given my response to the major bear case that people have been bringing up against the company, let's hop on over the charts because as I mentioned, this was a trade that I took 95% of the way that the stock was moving on the charts. Yes, I would not have taken this type of trade if it was not a stock that I absolutely loved, but this was mainly a technical trade. So let's hop on over the charts and I'll talk about what I saw there. Okay, so here we are looking at Peloton Stock, ticker symbol PTON. So these are all lines that I drew out in a previous video, so I have not moved them in any way to make my entry look any better or any worse than it actually is. And so I look for areas where the price movement has justified me putting a support or resistance. And so the three important areas that I drew, we have a support around the $100 mark. You have a resistance that has been treated mainly as a resistance, but sometimes as a support at the 135. And then you have the all-time high of around $171. And so those are the three areas that I'm watching right now. And so as the stock was falling based off of the overall market sell-off and the problems with the supply chain, I was waiting for it to come down to this $100 mark. And this previous Friday, it came down here, and we have this very large candle. What this means is that the stock opened at, what is this, $104, and then it had a intraday low down at $94. And so you might be asking, doesn't that mean that the support didn't hold up? What I look for when a stock is trying to respect a support is I don't really care what it does during the day, I care where it closes. So basically what happened is that the stock opened here, came all the way down to an intraday low of $94 and was bought back up above the support. And so this shows me that the stock respected the support perfectly. And so I did not actually see that during the course of the day. And so yesterday when things were going, I ended up buying in around the $100 mark. And so did not get the best entry overall. Would have loved to buy in around like $96, $97, but I'm pretty happy with my entry of $100. And so when I look for these investments, I'm looking for what's the short-term potential. And I see that going back up to the $135 mark, which would be an increase of 38%. And so when I look below it, I see the potential bottom as being down at like the $80 mark, but this is a company that I love for a long-term investment, and if the market continues to sell off and Peloton falls with it, I will be continuing to add on the way down. But this is what I saw as being a fantastic entry. I had it charted, I set an alert and I kind of missed the alert, so that is my fault, but I did have it set up and I told myself that I was going to be buying in if that happened. And so while I didn't get the best entry, I followed my trade plan and I bought in around the $100 mark. So that was the reasoning for why I decided to buy in a Peloton stock, ticker symbol PTON. This is somewhat of a risky trade. After I bought in, the stock did continue to fall further, so there was some risk involved with it, and it is definitely risky buying into a tech stock as the tech stocks have been selling off aggressively. But this is a company that I love for a long-term investment, and I took a relatively small position. If you've been around this channel for a bit, I refer to these as feeler positions because I want to be involved with the company, but I don't want to put myself at too much risk because it is possible that the stock continues to fall. But based off of the price movement and the fact that it came down to my support, closed above it, and then I bought in, I feel pretty good about this trade overall. If the market continues to sell off, I don't think that support will hold and will likely continue to fall, and I will add to my position the lower it goes. So that's kind of the way that I look at these positions is, yes, it's going well for right now, but I don't think his movement that we've been seeing is going to be sustainable. I expect the market to continue to sell off, and so I was able to open a position, make a little bit of profit, and then I will continue to add if the market falls. So let's summarize the reasons why I decided to buy in the Peloton stock, ticker symbol PTON, for a long-term investment. Number one, and the most important reason, is that this was mainly a technical trade. The stock had a very solid support at the $100 mark, and the stock came down to it as the market sold off at the end of last week, came down to my zone and closed above that. So I saw that as being a potential entry, and that's why I decided to buy in. It has to do with the fact that I do also love the company, but the technical side of it was one of the main reasons why I decided to buy in. Number two is the reasons for the stock falling I don't think is being a huge problem long term. Short term, it's going to be hurting their profit margins because of their supply chain problems, but I don't see this as being a long-term problem to the company. The demand is still there for the products, it's just that they're not able to get them out in a timely manner, and that will hurt the company in the short term. And I think the 40% drop from the all-time highs is a fantastic discount. Number three is I think the sky's the limit for this company. From everything that I've seen, they have very high retention rate and brand loyalty. And the fact that they've acquired the company Precor, which has hundreds of patents for fitness equipment, I think that they're going to be expanding their product rotation of, as of right now, they just have the bikes and the treadmill. So I think they're going to be expanding their products in the upcoming years, and I think it's going to allow them to reach markets that they haven't been able to reach in the past. They have expanded to Australia now, so now they're reaching more markets, which are going to include more people. They have the target of reaching 100 million subscribers. They are only at 2 million right now, so they do have a long way to go, but I think the sky is the limit for this company. So overall, I'm a big fan of Peloton, and it came down to my zone, and I'm a man of my word. If I see a stock that I love coming down to a support, and it respects that support, I'm going to be buying in most of the time. So I don't know if this is going to be the bottom of the stock market. Probably not. We've been seeing an incredible level of volatility. It's been really tough to decide which direction the market's going to go. So whenever I see an opportunity like this, I like to buy into stocks that I love, but I'm still very heavy in cash at this point, and I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say about the overall stock market and when you thought about my decision to buy Peloton, ticker symbol PTON, for a long-term investment. Thanks for watching this video. I appreciate all the support, and I will see you in the next video.